So this is exactly how the precision airstrikes against Iran played out. It's actually a pretty insane thing we were able to do this, because there were so many reports out of China and Russia that they're beginning to freak out that we were able to do this all without being detected. Even they didn't know what we were doing with these B-2s until it was too late. So it all started at the Whiteman Air Force Base. This is located in the state of Missouri, right in the middle of the country, and it is home to all the B-2s, well, that participated in this exact mission. It all started the 21st of June, and there were dozens of tankers to refuel them while they were still in the air. I mean, they literally had to fly across the globe. They couldn't lose elevation at all. 17 hours after they took off from Missouri, they caught up with these guys, support package and CENTCOM. They then enter Iranian airspace about an hour later and proceed to hit all 3 targets within the span of 20 minutes between 1840 and 1900. I just want to know, is that US time or is that Iranian time? I'm assuming it's US time. From St. Louis to Tehran, there's about an 8.5 hour difference, so that is somewhere in the middle of the night when they striked all 3 facilities. I think if I'm doing my math right, it would have been like 3 a.m. or something like that in Iran. By 1930, the B-2s exit Iranian airspace while continuing to be refueled at different checkpoints, and by the 22nd of June on Sunday, the boomers finally returned to Whiteman Air Force Base. It's also crazy that after this occurred, like, we almost immediately announced it before the B-2s even came back. The pilots were still flying for several more hours before they made it back to the US. Again, this is significant not only because of the Iran stuff, but because China and Russia watched us do it. I mean, there's still speculation if these 3 targets were all equally damaged as, to the full extent, but it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, I mean, this is scary as hell for Russia and China. I mean, it matters to have hit all of these, to stop Iran's nuclear program, but ultimately, the fear was put into the international world, if you are, against the USA, because literally no one else on Earth got these B-2s or their bunker bombs. It's literally insane. Yeah, so I did remember there were reports of some B-2s heading west towards Guam. That was basically a diversion tactic. Ironically, Portuguese news channels spent the past week reporting on the ever-increasing number of refueling tanker planes at this airbase. Yeah, can you imagine how many tanker planes they needed to set up for this? Everyone also is now saying that the plot of Top Gun Maverick is completely obsolete now that we know the US can do this. I mean, why didn't they just use the B-2s to hit the targets at the climax? All this flying, yeah, they didn't really need to do this. It didn't need to be that intense. At least they gave this a real operation name, not some Orwellian BS like Operation Unquestionable Goodness. Yeah, that seems like a direct reference to the real-life Operation Iraqi Freedom. Yes. Imagine sitting at a bar in Missouri tonight. What kind of trouble did you get into, Al? Bombed Iran? Oh. Man, it's jarring just how far behind the Russian Air Force is compared to the US. Those pre-2022 COD games look ridiculous now. Casually flying halfway around the world and back undetected while Russia can't even achieve air superiority next door. I mean, it's kind of no wonder Iran gave a very weak response to this whole thing. They just kind of launched a couple of missiles at Qatar and the US base there, which none of the missiles hit. They were probably thinking like, wow, we literally can't do anything to stop that. So they just went right back to firing missiles at just Israel instead. The nation of Azerbaijan has a new nickname, the Corridor in the Sky. Actually doesn't seem like a nickname, that's kind of a mouthful, but as of recently, basically all flights are being forced to fly over Azerbaijan airspace. That is because obviously there is limited flights going into Russia, well, especially over this part of Ukraine. But also as of about 2 weeks ago, you can't fly here either, ever since Israel and Iran have been hurling missiles at each other. So if you're flying from Europe to any part in East Asia, you will be forced to go over this nation. Turkmenistan has a lot of air traffic, but if you're having to go to, I don't know, something more north, then, they might go through Kazakhstan airspace instead, or Uzbekistan. It's really incredible to see Azerbaijan specifically in this moment. And I just checked, funny enough, it is still like this. This is still the corridor in the sky. There's a couple of brave souls that are flying over Iraq right now, and again, still very limited planes going over Russia. Let's just hope nothing crazy happens in Azerbaijan where we can't fly over them anymore either. What the hell are we gonna do? It'd actually be kind of terrifying. Also, don't forget, I mean, Azerbaijan and Armenia have been getting into it for a couple years now. I mean, it's definitely possible that, well, the airspace is locked down there too. All flights from Europe to Asia or vice versa canceled overnight. Must have been all the greedy Azerbaijani airport operators who caused all these wars to get more air traffic. Follow the money. Yeah, I don't know if they're actually enjoying this that much. It's a lot to manage up there in the skies. Again, this is all coming after the heavy restrictions for flying over Russia, also Iran and Israel. This is exactly what I mean. If Armenia and Azerbaijan started up their conflict again, that would be chaos for the skies. Literally the Suez Canal of air travel right now. And honestly, I don't really see this getting any better anytime soon. I think Azerbaijan is going to be forced to be this kind of air canal. Just continue to have more and more pockets in the air where we're not allowed to fly through, or heavily restricted, I should say. How many more holes are going to continue? Here's the up-to-date list on LGBTQ rights in the Middle East. So let's start in Turkey. So Turkey is one of the only places where homosexuality is legal. It also seems to be legal in northern Cyprus as well as in Jordan. Again, important to remember, it just means it's legal. That's it. Nothing above that. Because, for example, the rest of Cyprus, not northern Cyprus, just Cyprus, they allow for civil unions, and you can do a same-sex marriage, but it has to be abroad. While civil partnerships are legal and offer some of the same rights as marriage, the country does not recognize same-sex marriage performed either in Cyprus or abroad. That's what this is saying. Israel is the only place in the Middle East that's purple, which is same-sex marriage done abroad is recognized. Again, keyword is recognized. You cannot perform them in Israel, though. In fact, the only two places in all of Asia where you can do a same-sex marriage in their borders is Thailand, that's not surprising, and Taiwan. Thailand only very recently made that legal, though. Taiwan's been doing it since 2019. That's a whole 6 years before Thailand. Now for the other countries. In Lebanon, Palestine, I believe that's Palestine in yellow, and Syria, it's labeled under anti-propaganda. There's an anti-propaganda law. Or maybe that's just Palestine. I can't even tell because the image is so low quality. But maybe this is actually prison, but it's unenforced. Yeah, I actually think that Lebanon and Syria, they have prison unenforced, though. Why is the wording in this so weird? In Iraq, Kuwait, Egypt, Yemen, and Oman, it's prison. You go to prison. It's not unenforced. If you are LGBTQ, you go to prison. Then there's the other Arab states like Qatar, like the UAE, or Saudi Arabia, where you get the death penalty, but it says it's unenforced. That's crazy. Unenforced death penalty. So it's like jaywalking, I'm guessing. It's really different than jaywalking, but you know, like, you're not supposed to jaywalk in America, but if you do, I literally jaywalked in front of a cop yesterday. I was wondering what he was going to do if he didn't do anything. Iran is the only place, according to this map, where you will get the death penalty, and it is in fact enforced. So yeah, quite different than, well, what we were talking about earlier, Thailand and Taiwan. Turkey had to pick between keeping its Turkish baths or outline homosexuality, but not both. Wild how Iran is not okay with you being gay, but they would then fund your sex change to fix it. What? Alright, this just sent me down an absolutely insane rabbit hole. Yeah, this is more like LGB rights in the Middle East, though, since there's no mentions of trans rights. And the rest of these comments are just talking about how this post is maybe trying to justify war with Iran. Well, okay. Now compare that to this, the number of churches in the Middle East. Now, very key word here, churches. We are not talking mosques. And Saudi Arabia is in white, which means there are zero. There is not a single church in Saudi Arabia. I should say there are no legal public Christian churches in Saudi Arabia. Maybe there's a secret underground one, though. I wouldn't test that. I feel like that's how you probably get the death penalty. Then we have other Arab nations like Yemen, Qatar, and Kuwait. They have anywhere between 1 to 10. Now, to be fair, these are very small countries. I mean, they don't have a whole lot of real estate to build anything in general, let alone Christian churches, when a lot of their population is definitely not going to be Christian. It's actually a great map to bring up right now, in fact, just the percentage overall of Christians in the Middle East. I mean, even though Saudi Arabia had 0 churches, about 4% of their population is Christian. Now, I believe it's completely outlawed in this country, so that these must be secret Christians, or maybe they're just tourists that are currently living there. I bet you that might be the thing. Yeah, there's a lot more in Kuwait and Qatar. I don't know if 1 to 10 churches is going to be enough, though. Looks like the UAE and Oman have anywhere between 10 and 100. Iraq has possibly anywhere between 100 and 500. Same goes for Jordan, Israel, and, well, Turkey's such a massive country. It's kind of crazy that Turkey doesn't have more, because Lebanon, Syria, and then Egypt have over 1,000. Egypt, I believe, if I'm correct, has the biggest number of Christians in all of the Middle East. Actually, Lebanon has the percentage-wise, but if you're just talking about the pure number, then it's going to be Egypt at 10%. They've got somewhere between 10 million Christians living in Egypt alone. Also kind of surprised by Iran there. Iran apparently has about 500 to 1,000. And we might be able to look back at the old colonial days and be able to justify some of this. Obviously, Egypt was under the British Empire. But also there's Christian Coptic. That's its own little thing. There's plenty of reasonings, actually, that you can explain why, you know, certain places in the Middle East have more Christians or even more churches. I'd be interested to see that per capita. For example, Cyprus has a lot of churches, but it's a tiny little island. I can see why Lebanon would have a bunch, since they used to be a majority Christian country, 56% in 1932. Forget that Iran is not exclusively Persian. There's a ton of ethnicities that live in Iran, including Armenians, which traditionally are Christian as well. These are the only places on Earth that have viable wild lions, tigers, and leopards. And there's only one country with all three of them that are viable and also wild. That's India. India has all three. It is kind of crazy to my American mind that these things are just kind of running around in these places. But to be fair, I mean, we have grizzlies just running around, and that's kind of crazy in its own right. You definitely want wildlife to continue, though. So that is the thing. So Africa has a lot, but they are missing one. They don't have too many wild tigers running around. So the yellow countries here in Africa, they all have leopards, and then the yellow with the green stripe, that's leopards and lions. Lions exclusively in Africa. However, there's lots of leopards all throughout the Middle East, while excluding some of the countries. Finally, the tigers pop up in Myanmar, China, Thailand, all throughout Indonesia. Russia is big. I'm kind of surprised that Russia isn't also in black, but it's kind of too cold for lions to be running around there. Oh look, even North Korea's got leopards. Bangladesh only has tigers. Unfortunately, I think this map is probably also telling us a lot about like the hunting culture in some of these places, which is very sad. Certain cats are probably hunted after more. India has lions, tigers, leopards, snow leopards, elephants, rhinos, camels, and bears. All safaris in just one country. But you don't really think. When you think of safari, you don't think of India. Aussie here, we don't have wild lions, tigers, or leopards. However, don't finish that. We know what you got. Every European country with lion as a symbol or statue, yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about all the countries that have like a lion on their flag. Ethiopia used to have a lion on their flag. Luckily, they still have lions running around in the wild for them. Kind of want to see them bring back their old lion. That thing was pretty cool. And they deserve it. They earned to have that lion on their flag. This is the updated world map for 5G access. This thing is just spreading all over the place now. So 5G is the 5th generation of wireless technology. It's obviously a lot faster than 4G. Didn't realize that 1G back in the 1980s, that was just voice. That's all we had, analog voice. 2G was digital voice. So 5G started to be adopted a lot in the US back in 2019, at least in certain pockets, mostly in the US and or China. Those really deep purples, that was all 2019. It's like Switzerland and maybe London was first in terms of Europe. And as we head into 2020, it obviously spreads more throughout the US and Canada. Europe starts to get access to this a little bit. Should also mention South Korea's adoption pretty early, just like China. But the most recent new coverage is actually coming out of India and Malaysia, also certain pockets of Europe, specifically in the East. India, like overnight, got access to 5G, and it was like the entire country. That's actually very incredible. Any sort of white dots you're seeing in the US, that's kind of just for more and more of the rural areas. But also look at Canada, get their entire peninsula finally. It really extends into Slovakia and places like Latvia and certain spots of Finland as of more recently. Also keep in mind the pockets here in the Middle East. Also, this is kind of a population density map. Bigger population centers are going to see dots. Nigeria is one of the most populated countries in all of Africa. Brazil's not going to put 5G towers in somewhere in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. I mean, they kind of do actually, but funny enough. But yeah, most of the Brazilian population live along the coast, especially here. Look at Chile be online way more than Argentina. For Argentina, what are y'all doing? Then again, what is Mexico doing? That compared to Guatemala? Guatemala has almost their whole country versus Mexico. I mean, that's obviously going to be a little bit harder for Mexico. They're a lot bigger of a place. Look at that massive difference between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Again, the more rural you are, the less likely you're going to see like coverage everywhere. It's not necessarily a bad thing for Australia to not have their entire country colored right here, like for instance, India or China. Nobody lives in the outback really, so they don't need, towers this way. It'd be nice, but it's not necessary. In terms of Indonesia, the vast majority of their population just comes from this island. It's called Java, so that's where all the 5G coverage is being focused in on. Crazy how online Thailand is compared to the rest of Southeast Asia, though. I mean, Malaysia's kind of catching up, but nothing out of Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and then specifically Vietnam. You'd think Vietnam would compete. The Philippines doing a good job, though. Really like this stuff. I mean, some of it's population density, some of it is just, it's interesting to see what year they expanded to this technology. Fun fact, Australia's 5G network, as shown, covers 95% of the population. The rest of the the country is effectively empty. That's what I was saying. I've been to villages in rural China where there's limited running water from wells, outhouse toilets, and super fast 5G service. Probably the same for India. I'm literally at my village in this part of India. This place doesn't even have proper street lights for the whole night, but the whole village has 5G access. That's incredible. Also keep in mind, this is something that's literally changing on the daily, so more than likely it's a bit more updated now. For example, Mexico's doing a lot better. Also, so is Argentina. It's all through South Africa. Also, Kazakhstan got a nice little dot. Holy crap, yeah, Europe is pretty good. Romania finally catching up. This map actually shows that China might not have complete 5G coverage. Oh, Vietnam is catching up to Thailand too. Yeah, again, on the daily, this is something that probably needs to be updated. These are the patrons for this month. If you'd like to join, check that link down below to patreon.com. If Greenland is the largest island, then Australia is its own continent again, right? Drew Supremacy League. Drew's Argentinian Trust Fund. Rip Grandpa. Connor Pavlik. Carmel S. Douche Baggins. Alexander the Terrible. Frederick King. Tiblin. Bear Hayes. Luxembourg Lover. Miglu the Goat. Nolan. Nord Tyrol. And Tamron.